And there are just 4 days left until Canadians make their voices heard in the federal election. A new record was set at advanced polling, which saw 7.3 million people cast their ballots early. Obviously, Canadians are concerned about the future of our country, and the race to become prime minister so far is neck and neck. So here with more thoughts on the federal election campaign is Dalhousie University political scientist Lori Turnbull. Good morning, Lori. Great to see you again.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, this is going to be an exciting race, right? Good to the last drop, as they say. The leaders of the three main parties are making their final pushes ahead of Monday. And Elections Canada did report that record turnout for the advanced polls. Are you reading into this at all? Obviously, Canadians are concerned, but, you know, traditionally have advanced polls favored one party over the other?
I think it's hard to say. I mean, they used to say that advanced polls are bad for the government because of everybody showing up. It must be, they can't wait to go cast their ballot. It's probably because they're irritated. It's probably because they want to change. But I think in this election, it's hard to tell because people are so engaged. I think no matter who you're voting for, there's a sense that there's a lot of consequence in this election, that it really matters who wins. And so I'm not surprised that there was a high turnout at all. I don't necessarily think that it's automatically been better for one party or another. I think in this campaign, the two larger parties have been extremely prominent, right? Like this has been an election about who's going to become the prime minister. The smaller parties have had a harder time getting through to people and keeping their attention. And so I suspect we will see all of that come to fruition on Monday.
Yes, it certainly does seem to be a neck-and-neck race between the Liberals and the Conservatives. The latest polling numbers, what would you read into what the polls are saying lately? Because they have changed a little bit here and there over the course of the campaign.
Right. I mean, they've changed a bit, and it also depends on which polls you're looking at, because some of them have a more substantial lead for the Liberals. Others, it looks like the Liberals and the Conservatives are only a couple of points apart. And then you have to think about how those polls are going to break down. I mean, those are polls, right? They're not votes. But once the votes are actually tallied, how they break down into a seat count is a whole different thing. Like for the Liberals to be over 40%, that's majority territory for them when things are, ordinary, if I could put it that way, right? Like when they're over 40%, and the bloc is still viable and the NDP are still viable, then that typically would mean that's well enough for a majority for them. But now, given that it's really close with the Conservatives and the Liberals are not splitting the vote with the NDP and not splitting it as much with the bloc in Quebec either, it's harder to tell, how some of those ridings will actually go.
I would agree with you, and I think it's going to be very exciting, right to the wire on election day. Now, obviously, the Donald Trump factor has been a big issue. I think if I might offer an opinion, I think that is why people have been running to the polls, because they're concerned about the future of the country and they want to protect Canadians as best they can. Yesterday, Donald Trump apparently said something to the effect that Canada would cease to exist if it weren't for the United States. So he's really kind of twisting the knife in there for Canadians. What do you think that Trump is the factor why Canadians are so stirred up about this election?
Yes, I think it's Trump, but it's also everything that Trump represents. It's the potential threat to sovereignty. It's the economic issues and a lack of predictability. It's the end of a relationship that or not the end of a relationship, I shouldn't put it like that, but it's a significant shift in a relationship that we've depended on for a long time. And now we will need to change. Even if Trump stops saying the things he's saying, even if he took all the tariffs off tomorrow, still, the damage has been done, and we need to think about how we can partner differently and arrange things differently so that we're never caught in this vulnerability again. And so the election has become, who do we trust to manage all of this? Because this will take a lot of sorting out. And I think it's really that's why we see the two-party race and really difficult for the other leaders to get through, because people are thinking about who is going to be in that leadership position.
Yes, and we just saw images of all the major party leaders there. Mark Carney had a bit of a Trump bump at the beginning of the campaign. Do you think that that's going to continue to impact Canadians' voting decisions?
I think it will have an effect, for sure. I think that uncertainty has shaped up to be the ballot question. I think that Pierre Poilievre it was his role in this campaign to try to convince people why Carney shouldn't continue as prime minister despite everything, despite the circumstance we're in, and the fact that Carney's credentials and experiences make him seem so suited for that. And he's the prime minister now. Poilievre's argument is we need to not do that. Don't give them a fourth term. He's trying to collapse the Carney and the Trudeau governments kind of into one thing. And so the campaign is really about whether he's going to be successful at that, because not too long ago, Poilievre looked like he was going to get, a 200 plus seat majority for the Conservatives. And so the campaign has been a lot about how Poilievre will pivot, if he's going to be able to do that at all. And at this point, will Carney continue to see a bump from Trump? To a certain, of course, right? Like to a certain extent, because I think for all those reasons. But at the same time, those issues around affordability, housing, those are there. They don't go away. It's just that Trump has had a way of framing this election and putting a real sense of urgency to it.
We have a little bit less than a minute, Lori. What do you expect the leaders to, any surprises, what can we kind of expect to happen as these last few days, happen as we head toward the polls?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, honestly, I think this has a sense of being almost over but the crying kind of thing. Like, I don't know that there's that many people out there who are still trying to figure out who they might vote for. I think there's a sense that a lot of people have made up their minds, but there are always undecided voters. There are undecided voters walking into the polling booth on election day. And so the leaders are trying to figure out how to get through to them. It's too late to change the minds of anybody who's committed to their decision. And so this is about traveling to the swing ridings, getting into spaces that are kind of up for grabs. So, for example, we've seen Carney spending some time in British Columbia in the last 24 hours or so, because that's a battleground for the three parties. This is at this point, when the House was dissolved, they had roughly the same number of seats each, the Liberals, the NDP, and the Conservatives. Now, it looks like the NDP have really dropped there, which means there's quite a few seats up for grabs. And so that's where the leaders are going to be focusing their attention. The leader's time is a resource for the party at this point. And so where they place the leader says a lot about where they're trying to get those final votes to move.
Well, Lori, thank you so much for your time this morning. Pop the popcorn, because it is going to be an exciting election night. All right, thank you so much. We'll check in with you again next week. CTV Morning Live is going to take a break. We'll be right back with more of the show after this.